And after a day of travel, we finally made it to our first destination, and that is the Creation Museum. We were there just before Thanksgiving, so it was a little chilly. We didn't really know what to expect, so as we were walking through, we didn't realize it was a little bit of a hike to get to the main entrance of the museum. But it was really cool to be able to see the grounds. They had a bunch of dinosaur exhibits that were lit up with some Christmas lights, which was really cool to see. As you enter the Creation Museum, the first exhibit that you'll be greeted with is about dragons. And what's really cool is before the word dinosaur, which refers to land-dwelling creatures, was invented in the 1800s, the word dragon was used. The exhibits at the Creation Museum explain how that means all dinosaurs are dragons, but not all dragons are dinosaurs.
All scientists study the same evidence, but their starting points lead them to reach different conclusions about the world around us. Life forms arose from a common ancestor. They believe what Genesis 1 teaches, that each kind of animal will only bring forth after its kind.
At the heart of the Creation Museum is a chronological retelling of biblical history in 7 parts, called the 7 C's. Guests step back in time, beginning with creation, and fast forward to Christ's return. The different sections talk about different stories throughout the Bible. Our boys thought the David and Goliath section was interesting as it shows David with Goliath's head. There are very detailed exhibits that talk about the apostles and different figures that appear throughout the Bible. The exhibit of Jesus had some very compelling information. It lists the biblical history and also asks the question, was Jesus copied from other pagan gods? This section lists all of the books from the Bible and who they were written by, as well as a very detailed map of the path that the apostles took to spread the word. The first section of the Genesis exhibit is pretty awesome. If you read this chalkboard as you first walk in, it shows how the Bible versus what man says regarding creation is pretty much debunked. It's very interesting. I highly recommend you take the time to walk through this section slowly and read everything before walking into the Garden of Eden. The Garden of Eden walkthrough was really awesome. It shows how God created Adam on the 6th day and how Adam named all of the animals. And it also talks about how God created Eve. It just gives you a really interesting representation of what the garden would have looked like. I mean, you're walking through there and there's dinosaurs hanging out with Adam and Eve, which is pretty wild. Very cool to walk through. The kids really enjoyed this section. We spent some time in here looking at all the animals and reading all the different placards. Very, very cool. And fun fact, everything and everyone was originally a vegetarian before the original sin. The Cave of Sorrows exhibits was pretty tough to walk through, but it just goes to show you that after the original sin, the death and the suffering that we still experience today, it all took place because of the original sin of Adam and Eve. Very powerful, very sad to look at, but it is a part of the Bible and the history. This section of the exhibit goes into further detail about the effects of the original sin. That includes death, suffering, poisonous plants, and venomous animals, and all kinds of physical and spiritual hardships due to the original sin. Another very powerful section, the exhibits, brings a visual aspect to it that really brings the words to life.
Through the line of Cain came industry, metalworking, music, art. But along the way, they forgot all about God and a great ship, an ark. And you know what? It's almost finished.
This section portrays the building of the ark and what it would have looked like as they were constructing it. This is, of course, a very small section. The Creation Museum is a sister attraction to the Ark Experience, which you'll get to look at in a future video. But this just gives you an idea of what the construction process would have looked like. There are also some smaller dioramas that show the completion of the ark, what it would have looked like on the inside, different subsections, the ark floating, and some additional sections or cutouts of the ark, what it would have looked like on the inside. That feature was out of order, unfortunately. This was really cool, showing the interior, the different levels where they would have kept the animals, grain, food, all of those things. And then this takes you into the Great Flood. They have some really cool interactive videos that show the earth being covered in water. And then you have the ark at its final resting place after the waters receded. And then in this section, it starts to take you through what the earth would have looked like after all of the water receded, and we start to get into fossilization, sediment placement, and different geological things that took place because of the flood. After the flood exhibit, the next exhibit is about the Tower of Babel. And it talks about how God confuses the languages, and it goes over the creation and origins of things such as language, skin colors, and families, which were The last main exhibit is about Christ, the cross, and consummation. Again, a lot of information in this exhibit. I highly recommend you take your time and read as much of it as you can, as long as your kids aren't tugging at you to go look at the dinosaurs. But walk through here, very moving. Again, it was very enjoyable and really solidifies the whole reason of the Creation Museum. The Borderland exhibit was really cool. It had a lot of artifacts and gave you a really good understanding of what life would have been like during the New Testament. It's kind of off to the side of the main exhibit once you finish the Creation Museum. So it's really cool to get a good understanding of how everyone would have been living during the time of Jesus. And again, a lot of information. So if you have the time, walk through there slowly and read as much as possible to get a complete picture of what life would have been like. You can't go wrong with a good dinosaur exhibit, and the Creation Museum did not disappoint. These dinosaurs were awesome. And going through the entire Creation Museum, there were skeletons of dinosaurs throughout the museum, but this particular section was all about the dinos, and it had biblical references and really made you think about what you might have learned in school about dinosaurs being on Earth 65 million years ago versus the Creation Museum and the fact that dinosaurs might have been around when man was around. So very interesting, really cool section of the museum. Our kids absolutely loved it, and big kids will love it too. This exhibit, the Fearfully and Wonderfully Made exhibit, was very interesting. Our boys are starting to get a little bit older where they're asking questions about where babies come from. So this was pretty eye-opening for them. I'm not sure that they fully understood how babies come to be, but as an adult, it's a good refresher. Very interesting, as all of the exhibits are, and it just reinforces the fact that we're all made in God's image. The final exhibit that we walked through was the Insect Museum, or Insectorium as it's called. It has a huge collection of beetles, huge, all kinds of beetles. It's just ridiculous, the number of beetles, and the size of some of those things, terrifying. The dung beetle, the boys' favorite. Very cool stuff. Between the dinosaurs and all the beetles and grasshoppers and crickets and butterflies and dragonflies, it was really, really cool. And if you're not a fan of insects or beetles, then you don't have to go check it out. But I would suggest that you look at it because, as far as I know, they won't jump out and get you. As we left the museum, with the sun going down and it being very overcast, they had all of the Christmas lights up, which was really cool to look at. We walked through the botanical gardens for a little bit. Again, it was cold, so we were trying to make our way back to the main building of the museum as quickly as possible. Our kids, on the other hand, they could care less. They were just running around, scouting, doing military missions throughout the garden, having a good old time. And that was our trip. We thoroughly enjoyed the Creation Museum, and I highly recommend, if you're in the area, go check it out. Some really, really cool exhibits, tons of information, and it just gets your brain thinking in a completely different way. Highly recommend it. And if you can go during the holidays, you'll get this super cool light show in the evening. Just make sure to dress warmly. Bring some snacks. They do have a cafe inside, but bring some snacks because snacks make everything better. Hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll catch you in the next one.